Uh, uh, uh. Took you long enough, Joseph. We cannot start without you. Yes, whatever the case, I'm here now. What is this meeting for? We are recapping the last few decades of history in our country and using it to make a prediction for what might happen next. I am presenting. Well then, now that I'm here, shall we begin? Yes, I believe there is nothing to wait for. Let us begin. This is our country. Back in 1783, we won a war against the pillagers that made our country free and independent from the tyranny of King George III. Since then, much has changed, and to prepare for the future, a recap is more than necessary. So, let us begin our journey. In 1789, Founding Father George Washington was elected unanimously by the Electoral College and became our first president. He went for 4 years, which became the standard for one term, and then stayed as president another 4 years, making 8 years or 2 terms. However, in 1796, one year before his second term was to end, he released his farewell address. To put it simply, this document stated that he would not run for a third term, which set a precedent for all future presidents. And to keep his country in check, this address also stated many things the country should be aware of. These included that national unity was essential, political parties were dangerous, permanent foreign alliances should be avoided, public morality and education were crucial, and economic independence was necessary, all with the hope that the United Villages of Minecraftia would remain strong, stable, and guided by its constitution. A few years later, in 1803, the Louisiana Purchase was made from the French for $15 million, doubling the territory of the United Villages of Minecraftia. This territory later became villages such as the Dakotas, Iowa, Missouri, and Nebraska. The next year, 1804, expeditioners Lewis and Clark pushed westward expansion by exploring the northwestern portion of what is now our country, going all the way to the northernmost part of Oregon and back. Almost a decade and a half later, in 1818, Missouri applies to become part of the United Villages of Minecraftia. However, it applied as a slave village, which raised concerns in Congress about the balance of power between slave villages and free villages. This conflict was solved in 1820, when Maine applied for villagehood as a free village. This allowed one free and one slave village to join the Union, keeping the balance of power, and resulted in the Missouri Compromise, which said that no new slave villages can exist above a certain decided line that ran along the top border of Arkansas and Oklahoma. In 1823, President James Monroe created the Monroe Doctrine, a document warning Europeans against interfering in the Americas. In 1830, President Andrew Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act, which designated specific areas as okay for American Indians. He listed all the benefits they would receive and the benefits we would receive, making it beneficial for all. In 1836, the Republic of Texas declared itself independent from the country on our southern border, Mexico. Just under a decade later, it was annexed as a village of the United Villages. In 1846, the Oregon Treaty established control over the territory of Oregon. From 1846 to 1848 was the Mexican-American War. This war was fueled by our belief to expand westward, border disputes, and the annexation of Texas, and was initiated when President James Polk sent troops to disputed territory to intimidate the Mexican government, and the Mexicans attacked. The war ended with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which defined the border between Mexico and the United Villages of Minecraftia. In September of 1850, a series of bills were passed by Congress that temporarily handled the conflict between villages about slavery. This was called the Compromise of 1850. The results of these bills were enforced laws about the enslaved, California, Utah, and New Mexico becoming villages, with California being a free village and the others being left to popular sovereignty, Texas becoming a bit smaller due to giving up land to New Mexico for $10 million, and slave trade, but not slavery itself, being abolished in the capital, Washington, D.C. In 1854 was the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which allowed popular sovereignty on the decision of slavery in the newly created territories of Kansas and Nebraska. These territories were above the Missouri Compromise line, thus repealing the Missouri Compromise from 1820. However, this led to Bleeding Kansas, which was violence over slavery that lasted from 1854 to 1859. Then, fast forward 1 year, and here we are, 1860 and a new president. How the times have changed. Well then, gentlemen, what do we think of all this? Yes, Jerry, George, then Jeremy. So, this is all interesting. Thank you for making this recap. Now, I am intrigued mainly by Washington's farewell address. According to your presentation, the farewell address generally stated, and I quote, "National unity is essential, political parties are dangerous, permanent foreign alliances should be avoided, public morality and education are crucial, and economic independence is necessary." For clarity, I would like to add a direct quote from the farewell address itself, particularly about national unity. In his farewell address, Washington says, "The unity of government which constitutes you one people is also now dear to you. It is justly so, for it is a main pillar in the edifice of your real independence." There are many instances where we did not follow Washington's wishes. Slave villages and free villages, maybe even villages in general, and the Missouri Compromise line. May or may not be going against national unity there, hard to say, but worth pointing out. One thing that is almost definitely going against national unity, though, is Bleeding Kansas. Slavery seems to be a big issue right now. Somehow you also managed to not mention the existence of political parties in this entire presentation, which is a significant factor right now in the decisions over free villages and slave villages. In his farewell address, Washington also warned us that men can shift public opinions to their side via political parties, and I fear that may be happening now. Thank you, Jerry. You are very right. Thank you for pointing that out. George, you're up. Like Jerry, I want to make some connections, but while he focused on Washington's farewell address, I would like to connect to our overarching concept of manifest destiny. First, the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. Huge thing right there. Really shows how much we wanted to expand territory back then. It practically doubled our land area. Then the Lewis and Clark expedition the next year. Absolutely pushing manifest destiny there. Great stuff. Exploring territory and presumably seeing how easy or hard it would be to claim, perhaps foreshadowing the Oregon Treaty in 1846. But before that, in 1823, the Monroe Doctrine. I would like to quote one line from it that I think summarizes what he's saying. Near the beginning, he writes, "The American continents are henceforth not to be considered as subjects for future colonization by any European powers." Absolutely stunning work by James Monroe. That sure lets us keep our land for ourselves. Very nice. 1830, the Indian Removal Act. Very good. That's organization right there, establishing boundaries. That's how you know it's serious. A very clear example of how manifest destiny was shaping us up back then. And then came the Oregon Treaty. This involved the purchase of Oregon, which gave us a bit more land. Overshadowing that, in my opinion, however, was the Mexican-American War. The war definitely was partially fueled by our belief to expand our country and fix those disputed borders once and for all, just like your presentation said. And it sure ended with that, and that's about all I have to say. Manifest Destiny has indeed shaped us all. Incredible, George, indeed. Thank you for that. Now, Jeremy, no fourth wall breaks. Sure thing. I would like to go over slavery in this timeline and how it affected our country. First, it's complicating things in the government. Prime examples of this are both the Missouri Compromise and the Compromise of 1850, both of which involved the complications of slave villages and free villages. In the Kansas-Nebraska Act, the government is being distracted by these matters. I'm not saying these matters aren't important. They're very important. That's part of why they're a problem. Coupled with the fact that the tension being caused by these matters is leading to violence, as seen in Bleeding Kansas, this can be a huge problem later in our country. Thank you, Jeremy. Very comprehensive indeed. Now, I'm not done. Oh no. Slavery has threatened national unity more times than I can count. It's complicating things in the government, it's incentivizing violence in villagers, and it's a huge part of many villagers' lives at risk. I think all signs point to a countrywide civil war within the next decade at the latest. Jeremy, don't be ridiculous. Something like that would never